Are you getting bored of this yet? How about the old people over there? I'm going to talk for about an hour, hour and a half, because this is the first time I've been able to talk in 40 years, or 34, whatever it is, since I left. Lou Fry is a marvelous young man, or was when I first met him, and he wasn't much, but he did have a magnificent fiancée. Republicans had to find little places to hide. I'm going to explain something to younger people. Well, how many young people here would like to be governor? Well, we need some blood. We need some blood. You see all these older gentlemen that spoke earlier? They are all fruit of my loins. That's a bit of... Things have to happen now in Florida because it's a desperate situation. Desperate. We have so many more people. Why? They should have had a big sign up, "Don't come down from Alabama," when I came down. Now we have no way of stopping the people from coming here and no way to change the nature of our failures. We have failures that are surfacing more and more. And all these gentlemen who spoke to you did a great job while they were there, but they were curtailed in doing it because they only could serve at the max was 8 years. Then during my tenure, we had the Constitutional Revision Commission that I sat with them and listened to them and watched them, and they thought about having a new constitution. And in that constitution, they wanted the governor at least to work for 4 years because they gave him an opportunity to succeed himself if, in fact, he could get the people to believe that he really did work. That's not easy in some cases, mine in particular. The aquifer will no longer support today's Florida, much less your Florida of 10, 20 years from now. When 10, 20 years, I'll be 100, and I'll come see how you're doing. So they'll have a bunch of more governors, and I'll still be alive. Think that's funny? It gets serious when you're my age. No, I'm delighted, but I'm telling you, we've got to do something about it.
Starting in 1 hour, former Florida Governor Claude Kirk's body will lie in state at Florida's Old Capitol building in Tallahassee. The public will be able to pay their respects to the governor and his family. A funeral service will be held on Monday at Bethesda by the Sea Episcopal Church on Palm Beach at 1 o'clock in the afternoon. Well, the former governor, who some called Claudius Maximus, is being remembered as the first Republican governor of Florida since Reconstruction. Kirk died Wednesday at age 85. As Mike Vasalinda tells us from our exclusive Tallahassee bureau, Claude Kirk was both forward-thinking and considered a maverick.
I, Claude Kirk.
On the January day he was inaugurated, Claude Kirk surprised Florida's political leadership with this announcement.
Calling for a special session of the legislature.
Kirk hadn't bothered telling anyone what he was doing. 1967 also saw Kirk sign legislation that paved the way for Disney World to operate as its own government. Kirk tangled with lawmakers over salaries, and he saw the legislature move from a backwoods institution to a modern body. Kirk hated sharing power with the elected state cabinet, referring to them as the Seven Dwarfs. In 1968, after lawmakers approved a tax hike to pay teachers, Kirk vetoed the budget. budget, causing teachers to strike for the first time in the United States. Kirk also spent much of 1968 actively campaigning for Republican presidential candidates, hoping to be named vice president. 8 years after losing the governorship to Reuben Askew, Kirk was back running for governor again, first as an independent, then as a Democrat.
I'm going to be governor, and I'm going to prove we're going to be governor.
He picked an African-American woman to be his running mate, the first African-American to run statewide.
When someone asked me who was going to be lieutenant governor, I said it would knock your eyeballs out. I produced that.
Florida's 36th governor appeared at Rick Scott's inauguration in January.
What did you think of the speech? Outstanding.
Kirk died Wednesday at his home in West Palm Beach.
Yes, Florida is the oceanographic center of the universe. Climate, unique educational facilities, 9,000 miles of tidal coastline, over 30,000 lakes, and the Florida Straits Current, which is part of the Gulf Stream system.
One of the most important segments of Florida's economy is our defense and space-oriented industries, which add a solid $2 billion each year to our income. I want to commend the executives of the more than 50 major Florida aerospace, electronic, and allied type firms who will hold a two-day seminar in Orlando, January 20th and 21st, for the purpose of discussing how they can better serve the defense market and meet the needs through these Florida firms.
In the interest of a better informed electorate, WTVJ is proud to present the first live television debate between Florida's two Democratic gubernatorial candidates, Mayor Hayden Burns of Jacksonville and Mayor Robert King High of Miami. To moderate, WTVJ's news director, Ralph Rennick.
Good evening, everybody. 10 years ago this month, in this same WTVJ studio, two men running for the governorship of Florida appeared in the first TV debate in the state's history. That was in 1954. Leroy Collins went on to defeat Charlie Johns in the wake of that program. The historical significance of that broadcast is pointed up by the fact that a kinescope recording of the Johns-Collins debate will be presented to Florida State University on June 8th by Channel 4 to initiate a historical film archive section of the FSU library. Tonight, 10 years later, a new chapter is about to be written into the state's gubernatorial campaigns. This is 1964. We have another governor's runoff primary election. The Democratic nominees are Hayden Burns and Robert King High. This is the first live TV joint appearance of the two finalists. Well, another question, what value do you place on these joint appearances? Do you think they accomplished anything constructive, Mr. Burns?
Well, if both candidates took their time to present to the people of Florida a clear-cut understanding of their philosophies and their programs and the background from which they were drawing their experience, I think they could be of great value. I'm disappointed again tonight that my opponent will not appear on this basis.
Mr. High?
I don't believe I quite understand you, Mr. Burns. We had an opportunity tonight to appear on Channel 10 together. I was in favor of that. We had an opportunity to appear jointly last night in Palm Beach. I was in favor of that. As a matter of fact, I think that when you and I are asking the people of Florida to give to us the most important possession that they own, and that is their right to vote, or their vote, that we should make every effort that we can to appear as often as we can and in all sections of the state of Florida.
Growth and security, progress and prosperity are not questions of political faith, but of devotion by all of us to a common cause. Whether a conservative Democrat as I, or a Republican as he, we are Floridians first, and we have a single coherent purpose: to build an ever greater state where the weak are safe and the strong are just. As I explored the peaks and valleys of executive leadership, I was blessed with the forbearance, patience, support, and understanding of a gracious companion, my wife Mildred, who supported me in times of happiness and adversity, success and frustration. And though we will leave it to history to judge the merits of my administration, I know now that Florida has never had a finer First Lady.
My fellow Floridians, there are moments which live forever in the memory of man. This to me is just such a moment. I am engulfed by gratitude to you, the citizens of Florida, for the great confidence expressed in your selection of me as your governor. I am humbled in the knowledge that so many people from so many walks of life gave of their time, their energy, and their talents to make it possible for me to stand here at this unique moment in Florida's history. Appreciation for the help, the support, the devotion of others can be expressed in many ways. It could be expressed by a simple thank you, or it could be expressed with flowery oratory. I prefer to express my appreciation in serving you as I have promised by constructive action. Together we shall move our beloved state far along the pathways of progress in every field towards our goal of making Florida number one.
The government was created to be a non-government, a non-governor. And they be sure that nothing ever happened bad. The powers of that day, be they who they were, created a system, a cabinet system for the state of Florida. And that meant that 6 people were elected to 6 different offices, and stood there as a cabinet group. And they voted, and they let one more fellow come in, the governor, created a 7. So 6 people who could be elected in perpetuity for life. Just like 67 sheriffs, write that down, 67 sheriffs, in 67 counties, who could only requirement to be a good law enforcement officer. Remember, I'm talking about sheriffs now. The only requirement, those of you out in the state listening, okay, was the ability to hear thunder and see lightning. I heard about the wonderful lotto. It's up to 20 million again. My wife, Erica, she bets every week. Not on Wednesday, just on the weekend. And we're going to be rich when we win the lotto. In the meantime, I tell her that's gambling and it's wrong. She says, when I have the money, you'll like it. And I said, you're damn right. I don't say damn right. But I'm afraid of my wife. You doing all right? The last subject is water. Put the water down. Imagine having to carry a bottle of water around. The seriousness of the water shortage in Florida is phenomenal. The legislature hasn't looked at it. The other governors have been great workers in following my environmental suggestions. They've added and made things. The EPA of the United States of America started in the Kirk administration when Nat Reed said, I want to explain to you, Governor, what environment means. I want to explain to you how you spell conservation. He realized I'd been at the University of Alabama and I didn't spell too well. That's why he was saying that. And that's what we learned about it. And from there, it became our Department of Environmental Regulation here in Florida. And from that, we taught Nixon how to spell environment, how to spell, what's the other one? Conservation, that's right. Well, you're doing good. And from that came the President's Council on the Environment, which was about 20 or 25 young men in a little office across from the White House called the President's Council on the Environment. From that became the Department of Environmental Regulation, or the Environmental Protection Agency.
I must go down to the seas again, the lonely sea and the sky. For centuries, man has been lured by the buried coffers of gold hammered by the ancients into coin and of jewels crusted by time. But today, he seeks to harvest the more bountiful and lasting riches made possible by the modern science of oceanography. Today's harvest is tomorrow's treasures, the story of oceanography in the state of Florida. Claude Kirk, Jr., governor of the state of Florida, has provided the leadership in Florida's oceanographic development.
I am Claude R. Kirk, Jr., governor of Florida, a land almost surrounded by the salt seas. Florida's beautiful beaches have drawn tourists for generations. The waters of the Gulf of Mexico and the Atlantic Ocean have provided recreation for millions of bathers and boaters and fishermen, and more recently, for skin and scuba divers. These vast bodies of water have another and more vital function than recreation. In and under the hydrosphere are natural resources, beside which those of the land masses of the world pale by comparison. We know that there is more food in a mile of ocean than ever could exist in a similar land area. We know there are mineral sources to be tapped for our expanding industrial economy. We know there are unknown wonders beneath the waves, and I know because I have been there. Finding and developing the resources of the sea is oceanography, and in this field, as in many others, Florida excels. The film you are about to see will reveal where Florida stands in oceanography and where we are heading.
I think that you see the desperation position of the Democratic Party on the ridiculous extremes that we have, and I have to be polite in the sense of my criticism of the Attorney General, who is a cabinet officer and a Texan, but nonetheless, you have the ridiculous extremes and the failures of both sides. Here you have the Attorney General who has abdicated his position of leadership for a law when he's saying that we're not going to do anything but to protect the law officer's life. Now that's a ridiculous assumption. And on the other side, you see the failure of the Democratic administration in Chicago when suddenly the mayor has to say we're going to shoot to kill. Now that's a ridiculous extreme.
And it was all Democrats, which is great. I was a Democrat. Everybody had to be a Democrat. I was a Democrat at the University of Alabama, where I'm the only person in my family ever went to real school, the University of Alabama, which of course is much better than some other schools I could name. Well, I dug the dirt for this one, so I'm not going to name this one. I dug the dirt that started this place. That's how important government is, how exciting it can be. But I was about to tell you, as we think about all these Democrats, and everybody had to be one. There were good ones, bad ones, little ones, big ones, but we weren't teaching.
A new Southern school strategy emerged in Washington and New Orleans today, one aimed at making desegregation standards apply uniformly throughout the nation. Florida's Governor Claude Kirk personally appealed to the Supreme Court to declare such a uniform standard and to consider setting one date for schools everywhere to comply. The Attorneys General of Alabama, Louisiana, and Mississippi announced a joint legal effort to make all public schools conform to the desegregation rules applied to the South. They said their first move will be to intervene as friends of the court in the Pasadena, California case, where school authorities have been given until September to submit a plan for desegregating.
There was also 67 other people that you had to see if you wanted to be governor. And they happened to run the school system of the county. And they were called superintendents or commissioners of education. And they too were elected in perpetuity because all they had to do was hear thunder, see lightning, major requirements. And what happened when I became governor, I wrote a white paper and I said, you know, this is wrong. My children are not getting educated. I had to start a school in order to get them educated. Is this the sort of thing I should talk about?
You're doing great, Governor. Talk into the mic, if you would, please, sir.
I'll talk where I want to talk.
I know. Nothing has changed.
The public school system of Manatee County, Florida, was to have been desegregated today under an order from a federal judge, whose order was upheld last Friday by the Supreme Court. But Florida's Governor, Claude Kirk, personally intervened, claiming he was determined to exercise our rights. He assumed control of the school system and ordered teachers and pupils to ignore the court order. Probably not since George Wallace made his stand in the schoolhouse doorway in Alabama in 1963, as a state governor placed himself in such direct conflict with the federal government. This afternoon, federal Judge Ben Krinsman, acting at the request of the Justice Department, called Kirk personally to account for his actions. He issued a restraining order against the governor to keep him from interfering with the rulings of the court, and he directed Kirk to appear before him tomorrow to show cause why he should not be held in contempt. Meantime, school was conducted as usual in Manatee County. Here is a report from ABC's Don Farmer in Bradenton.
School officials here in Manatee County were ready to desegregate this morning. The bus routes had been altered. 2,600 students were set to attend different schools. Some whites were unhappy, but no one expected any trouble. Then Governor Kirk stepped in. He took over the schools and stopped the planned integration. The court order was ignored. The school superintendent went home. The governor occupied the superintendent's office. He said his major objection to the order was its enforcement so near the end of the school year.
We're involved here in forced busing. Now that's the clearest cut, most violent circumstance in the nation and world's history is right here. It's as though you took a man out of Rayford's death row and you took him down the hall and you put him in that electric chair and you pushed the switch while he was on appeal. But even with all of that, if the law, after we've been in every court and done everything that is legally proper within the confines of the law, and Plan B is the order, then God save the nation, but that's what we'll implement.
School attendance was off about 5%, but the children showed no evidence of the controversy churned up by the adults. Black citizens here were not surprised by the governor's action, but they did not like it.
Well, I just had a chance to talk with a few of the Negro people on last night, and they think it's a disgrace that the governor was come in and take such action at this time.
The questions raised here are moral, legal, and political. The governor says it's immoral to disrupt the students. The governor's defiance of the Supreme Court may be a legal matter. And observers here say that politics is involved. They point out the governor may run for re-election this year, and in a campaign there is no more explosive issue than school integration. Don Farmer, ABC News in Bradenton, Florida.
Oh, by the way, I wanted to tell you, I was in a lot of things, but I was the most productive governor in Florida's history. I had 2 children on state time, on state property, and they've gone on to be just great.
Kirk ignored the school crisis long enough to show off his newly born son. Before flying to Bradenton late this afternoon, Kirk had strong words for the courts and ABC's Gregory Jackson.
Confrontation has been turned 180 degrees. The federal government is the violator, and I am the man who asks for law. I am the man who asks for his day in court. I am the man who pleads for hearing of my grievance.
Well, why don't you follow the federal law which ordered desegregation?
I am.
It ordered
desegregation. You're a fool. This is the #1 compliant state in the nation. And I tell you that you can tell your broadcasters in New York, as soon as they comply, as much as Florida has, as the #1 state in the nation in compliance, that's the whole difference.
I want to say that I'll match my record of production against any other governors. I have 7 children, 12 grandchildren, and with any luck today, over in St. Johns County, I may become a great-grandfather. Now that's I was sitting up there because I hadn't been sworn in yet. It was actually 66, wasn't it? And I was sitting up there listening in the Senate chambers, listening to all the brains of Florida that were in front of me. They were all members of that commission. A lot of smart guys, really nice guys, a lot of them. One sitting right over there was ex-Governor Charlie Johns. He wasn't too bright, but he was the ex-governor, Charlie Johns. He got to be governor by accident of a death. But then again, over here on the left-hand side of me, and the chairman, of course, was...
Mountain to Mohammed.
This will have it? Okay. The chairman was a very famous lawyer, was there, and I kept watching this young man come back and forth, up to the speaker's rostrum there in the Senate building, Senate chamber. And finally, I turned to him and whispered, because I wasn't supposed to say anything. I said, "What's that young man over there that keeps coming? I could really do something with him, and I just got elected myself, you know." I said, "Man, he's got some polish and some talent. That's a Democrat I could like. Get rid of all those old pustle-gutted crooks that are the other kind." I said, "What is that fellow's name? Because I want to remember him." Chesterfield Smith turned to me and said, "Name's Reuben Askew."
This is Politathon 70, coming to you direct from the stage of the Miami Beach Auditorium.
The office of governor began with a descriptive film. Then each candidate was introduced and made an opening statement. After the rules were explained, 16 questions were answered. We go directly to 2 of those questions.
Gentlemen, will come from Jacksonville, the communicator Jim Lewis.
Thanks, John, and on the line with me again, executive producer of News and Public Affairs for WJCT, Dick Brown. Dick, what is the Jacksonville question, please?
This question comes from Mrs. Ralph Bald, 5354 Whitney Street here in Jacksonville, and it's of particular interest to people in our community. That question is, what leadership would you exert to compel the legislature to fund schools so that each child has an equal education?
Do you all hear the question, gentlemen? All right, 1 minute allocated. Governor Kirk.
We've been trying to get the legislature to restructure education since I became governor. And over again, the legislature has refused, but has only pumped more and more money into the Edsel system that they have. And more gas in an Edsel doesn't make it any good. 1 out of 3 children in Florida is not coming out of the 12th grade. And this is the failure of the system, not money. Fortunately, Jacksonville has changed its style of government there, and they have an appointive superintendent. And of course, I want an appointive superintendent for the entire state, or a commissioner for the entire state. I don't care if you have a regent system or the legislature hires him, but we must have a man to run our system who's qualified to run the entire state system, and the legislature has balked on it each and every time.
Senator Askew?
Well, it's interesting that each time the governor speaks of restructuring education, what he usually means is to abolish Floyd Christian's job and place the whole educational system in his office. I think it's going to require more than restructuring, although I concede that in some areas it needs restructuring, and I favor it. I also know that until such time as we have some type of equality of assessment throughout the state, one county is going to wind up paying more than its share of the total burden to educate our school children.
I'm voting for Claude Kirk. I'm a mother with twins, and I think it's completely asinine to send them away to a school 5 miles away, and there's a school right in the neighborhood. I want my daughter to go to the school that she's going to, the school that we live by.
Let's keep Kirk. Claude gets things done.
He's a man who feels for the children and for the people of this state.
Because Reuben Askew then went on ahead and decided he'd like to become governor. Very logical thing. But he was the underdog of all underdogs of all times in the sense of the other Democrats' aspirants. But he very wisely picked a man who was in power at that time in the cabinet, and he took his strength, maybe not his attitudes and everything, but this man had a relationship throughout the state with the junior chambers of commerce, and the power and the way and the perseverance that they both showed, they thrust out and got Reuben nominated, which was a great thing. It was terrible for me, but great for the state.
This shirt was bought at Sears in Atlanta, Georgia. This shirt was bought at Sears in Miami. Both are identical. Both, the basic cost is $6.
The shirt, call it what you may, but it was, as a former trial lawyer, this is demonstrative evidence.
Even though in Sears, last year in Georgia, they paid the state of Georgia approximately $500,000 in state corporate taxes, while Sears in Florida was called upon to pay only $2,000.
I thought I was making some fairly articulate speeches about it and not getting very far. When I showed them the shirts on television, they understood that.
It's almost 5:32 right now. Funeral services are being held today for former Florida Governor Claude Kirk. News Channel 5's Ashley Walters is at Bethesda by the Sea Episcopal Church in Palm Beach, where the service will happen later today.
Good morning. The funeral service is expected to be about 1 p.m. this afternoon here at the Bethesda by the Sea Episcopal Church in Palm Beach. Now, friends and family have invited the public to join them here during that service. Former Florida Governor Claude Kirk died peacefully in his sleep last Wednesday at the age of 85. He was the first Republican to hold the office in the 20th century. He's being remembered as a strong and outspoken man who changed the course of state government and politics. Kirk was also a Marine officer in World War II and the Korean War. Now, the family has asked that in lieu of flowers, donations be made to the governor's memory to the Everglades Foundation, which works to preserve and restore the Everglades.
Just business, yeah. Cold clam, limp-handed. Kiss a cheek and fall asleep. Shouldn't this feel good? You have no need.
Our rural areas, too, wear the shroud of air pollution. One example is Central Florida, where fluorides given off in the processing of phosphates for fertilizer have damaged the citrus and cattle industries that form the mainstay of the local economy.
Pulled from the brain, dropped in a path. Closest can follow, they see it though quickly. The past sweepers are constantly paid by the